today we're going to talk about horror movie sets that were cursed. Okay, I've done videos on this channel before about movies that were based on true events, and then I did a video about the Poltergeist curse, you know. So I haven't really done a video where we just talked about all different types of movie sets that were perceived to be cursed. Let's get right into this video. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho from 1960. In 2001, you know the infamous shower scene, right? And then it says, one fan might have taken his obsession with the film to a heinous extreme. Cut to 2001, Kenneth Dean Hunt, a handyman, was convicted of killing 2 women, including an actress who was a body double for Janet Leigh, who was in the shower scene of Psycho for 1960. He killed, one of the people he killed was a body double. She was in Psycho. The body double in question was Myra Davis. Was simply a stand-in to test lighting angles not to appear in nude scenes. The press quickly reported that Myra Davis was nude body double. It says that in the book, The Girl in Alfred Hitchcock's Shower, it says the author suggested that Kenneth Dean Hunt was a psycho fanatic who set out to kill Lee's body double without realizing he murdered the stand-in by mistake. Everyone confused him. It says even a murderer. I talked about Amityville Horror on the channel before about the real events leading up to the movie. So this is the one from 2005. I didn't know this part. I knew, of course, that it was based on, you know, real occurrences, but here are a couple things that I didn't know about what happened on set. It says, while doing press for the film, star Ryan Reynolds, who portrayed George Lutz, told MovieWeb they found this house that they sort of retrofitted. It's terrifying. You walk up and it's just upsetting. There's something about this house that's upsetting. There's something about the colors around it. Everything was just a little upsetting. It says, however, that was only the beginning of the upsetting events that occurred while the movie was being made. Shortly after filming began, a corpse washed up on shore of a lake near the set. During an interview with Radio Free, Reynolds opened up about the terrifying discovery. Yes, that was something that was awful that happened. I know nothing about it, and we certainly didn't treat the situation cavalierly, but this was one densely populated lake area as well. I mean, it wasn't like a secluded pond, and this mafia member floated up or something, a legitimate accident, I think, okay. Yeah, I didn't know about that part about a body washing up near the set of this movie. Pretty creepy, right? For an already creepy movie. Alright, it says another bizarre occurrence in the early hours was that many members of the cast and crew would find themselves jolted awake. I think a lot of people make that stuff up to sell their movie, but there was some weird stuff that happened. A lot of the crew were waking up at 3:15 in the morning, which was when all these atrocities in the house took place each time. I think it was a subconscious thing. You read the script and suddenly pop awake at 3:15 in the morning. Reynolds admitted. That's weird. That's why you have to be careful with, you know, doing these type of movies. And, you know, I love a good horror movie, but the ones that's based off of real stuff, like, you gotta be careful with that. Another movie we talked about on the channel before, but not really got into the things that happen on set, is Annabelle. Alright, I think we're all familiar with Annabelle. It says the director, he opened up the Hollywood Reporter about 2 of the many creepy coincidences that happened on set of the Conjuring prequel. The first incident was when we were prepping. We went into the apartment where we were shooting, and in the transient window above the living room window, it was a full moon, and there were 3 fingers drawn through the dust along the window, and our demon has 3 fingers and 3 talons. The markings were being blacklit by the moon, and I have a picture. It was sick. That's creepy. The film's producer, Peter Safran, backed up his claim and revealed a little more about the much worse supernatural incident that occurred next. We shot in this amazing old apartment building near Koreatown, and we had some funky stuff go down. In particular, the first day that the demon was shooting in full makeup, we brought the demon up in the elevator. He walks out and walks to the green room where we're holding the talent, and just as he walks under, a giant glass light fixture is being followed by the actor portraying actor playing the handyman of the building, and all of a sudden the entire glass light fixture falls down on his head, on the janitor's head. And in the script, the demon kills the janitor in the hallway, in that same hallway. It was totally freaky. That's something too. It says The Conjuring, Vera Farmiga, who played the role of real-life paranormal investigator Lorraine Warren in The Conjuring, began having unexplainable experience as soon as she became interested in the script. She revealed that the first incident occurred after a phone call with director James Wan. There's a quote, "The strangest occurrence for me personally on the first one was the day I had a creative conversation with James Wan. I had just been researching Lorraine. I wasn't familiar with her, so before our phone call, I was on the computer and I had closed it. We had our conversation. At that point, I was just smitten with James. I said, if Patrick Wilson is in, because I knew at the time he had also been offered a role, then I'm in. I just wanted to be sure that Patrick was going to be my partner. So we agreed, and then we said goodbye, and I opened the computer screen, and there were 3 digital claw marks from the upper right diagonal to the lower left. The actor also recalled feeling she could not take the spooky script home with her. I read it in fits and spurts because it brought back overwhelming feelings of terror, awe, and shock. I didn't ever want to read the script at home. I figured that the safest thing for me to do would be to read it somewhere else during the day." That's crazy that she felt like she couldn't even take the script home. For me, that would have been like a sign to not do it. Alright, so a movie called The Possession in 2012. This movie was inspired by a now debunked hoax involving an antique wine cabinet purchased on eBay. Had a few unscripted experiences that were anything but fake. It says shortly before the film's release in 2012, the star Jeffrey Dean Morgan opened up to The Hollywood Reporter about his initial skepticism surrounding the box and its relation to bizarre on-set events. He said, "I am very skeptical, but not only would I not want the box around and tempt to fate, but there were enough weird things going on around our set that I've never seen happen on sets before. A few of the eerie details he recalled were lights exploding in the middle of a take and strange cold gusts of wind blowing in on the movie's closed set. The wind always happened in the middle of doing key scenes. It didn't happen in between takes or doing scenes that didn't have a big story impact." Also, however, while the real box may have been proven to be fake, the prop box had a strange story of its own. Morgan revealed what happened after the shoot wrapped. "We all had all of our props a couple of days after we finished wrapping. They put everything in storage for if you're gonna do reshoots or anything. It burnt to the ground. It was investigated and there were no signs of arson or an electrical fire." Alright, so a lot of us are familiar with the Twilight Zone. My parents love the Twilight Zone. That's pretty classic TV show from back in the day. It says The Twilight Zone, the movie. Alright, I never heard this. It says, although it was a horror movie, the most horrific part of the cult 1960 TV series big screen adaptation happening while filming. It says on the night of July 23rd, 1982 in Santa Clarita, California, one of the lead actors, Vic Morrow, best known for his starring role on the ABC series Combat, was filming a scene alongside 7-year-old Micah Denley and 6-year-old Renee Shin-Yi Chen. Morrow was playing Bill Connor, a racist who had transported through time and became a Vietnamese man attempting to save 2 children from the U.S. troops during the war. Alright, so this scene, it says that he was it was filmed at night and his character was trying to carry the 2 children out to an abandoned village. At the same time, American soldiers were supposed to be chasing them in a helicopter. It says while hovering close to a large explosive effect, the pilot positioned the aircraft close to the ground and then turned it 180 degrees for the following shot. The special effect was detonated while the helicopter's tail rotor was flying directly above, and the metal lid from the explosion struck the rotor, causing the aircraft to spin out of control. After the ensuing trial, the defense claimed the special effect had been detonated prematurely. The three actors on the ground could not escape the plummeting aircraft or its blaze and were killed instantly. Chen was crushed to death by the right landing skid, and the helicopter's steel spinning blades decapitated both Morrill and Lee. Wow, the New York Times reported that the helicopter sequence was both poorly planned and badly rehearsed. So it killed not only the Morrill character, him trying to get the children, but killed the 7-year-old and the 6-year-old. Wow. That's something I never heard of before. And then something says also the strangest part of the entire situation, 9 years later in 1973, Morrill insisted on having a life insurance policy while filming any scenes in which he had to ride in a helicopter. When asked why he was so hesitant toward this type of scene, it was reported that Morrill replied, "I have always had premonition that I was going to die in a helicopter crash." Wow. I'm sorry, 9 years earlier in 1973. He stated that he always had a premonition that he was going to die in a helicopter crash. He died on set, as well as the 2 children. Wow, that was crazy. I still can't get over that one. Alright, jumping into the next one is The Omen. It says, although many strange, heartbreaking events plagued the cast and crew of The Omen, 1 year after shooting the film, a tragedy occurred that oddly mimicked a death shown in the movie itself.
Okay, so here's something that I forgot to add, that I'm coming in here to add about the movie The Omen. It says these are some other events. It says people that was in the movie. His son unalived himself. You know, there was a plane crash, one producer who narrowly avoided being struck by lightning, and the death of a baboon handler. Okay, so those are other things that happened that I didn't mention about this movie, The Omen.
On August 13th, 1976, which happened to be a Friday the 13th, the film's special effects consultant John Richardson and his assistant Liz Moore took a late-night drive in Holland, where Richardson was working on Richard Attenborough's World War II drama, A Bridge Too Far. The pair was involved in a head-on collision. Richardson somehow managed to survive the crash, while Moore did not. She was decapitated in the wreck in an eerily similar manner to one of the film's characters, Keith Jennings's, who was decapitated by a sheet of glass in the movie. How similar is that to where in the movie someone is decapitated and in real life one of the people from that is decapitated? It says shortly after the crash, Richardson reportedly noticed a road sign that must have chilled him to this very core. The unassuming sign pointed to a small nearby Dutch village and listed the distance from Richardson's crash site. Where exactly was this bone-chilling sign directing drivers? To a town. I just got chills. The sign was directing him to a town called Omen, O-M-M-E-N, which was 6.66 kilometers away from the fatal accident. I could wrap up this whole video with this information from this movie. I'm gonna say it again. The movie The Omen had a person die and get decapitated, and inside the film when they did it, one of the characters was decapitated, and somebody got decapitated in real life. The person that survived the real life crash saw the sign where the fatal accident happened. It said Omen, to a town called Omen, O-M-M-E-N. And they were 6.66 kilometers away from the fatal accident. I could end this whole video right here, but I'm gonna continue. Alright, Rosemary's Baby. I think we're all familiar with Rosemary's Baby. That's one strange movie right there. Many unsettling events occurred after filming the iconic horror novel adaptation Rosemary's Baby, leading to many to believe that the movie and its film locations were cursed. One such incident was producer William Castle's strange hospitalization in April of 1969. Since the film's release the previous summer, Castle had been receiving much hate mail due to the film's satanic themes. One cryptic anonymous letter read, I'm quoting, "Bastard, believer of witchcraft, worshiper at the shrine of Satanism. My prediction is you will slowly rot during a long and painful illness which you have brought upon yourself." Wow. A few months later, Castle was hospitalized with kidney failure. Wow. Where in delirium, he insists that the film was cursed and repeatedly shouted, "Rosemary, for God's sake, drop that knife." The 54-year-old barely recovered and never worked on another box office hit for the rest of his life. Wow. Another death attributed to the curse was that of the film's composer. I don't know how you say this name, but you'll see it on the screen. Who fell off a rocky slope while roughhousing with a friend at a party in the fall of 1968. He slipped into a coma and died several months later due to a brain hematoma. While at first that may have sounded like an unconnected incident, this tragic passing mimicked the death in the film when Hutch, Rosemary's suspicious friend, dies after being in a coma. In 1980, 12 years after the film's release, acclaimed singer-songwriter John Lennon was shot and killed by a fan outside the Dakota, the building that served as the Bramford, aka Rosemary's apartment, may have linked the film's curse to Lennon's assassination. Alright, so these two other movies I've talked about in other videos, The Exorcist and The Poltergeist. I did videos on those, just, you know, so we already know what happened with those. So here's one. I'm not really sure if it's considered a horror movie, but it's on this list when I looked it up. Alright, The Crow. If you're familiar with The Crow, it says a cult classic with a horrific backstory. Was supposed to launch Brandon Lee into superstardom. Brandon Lee is the son of Bruce Lee, and it says it was supposed to launch his, like, you know, launch him into superstar and launch his career almost. However, a tragic mix-up near the end of production caused Lee to suffer an eerily familiar fate to one of his iconic father's film characters. Now listen to this. Listen carefully to all the information I'm about to read, and you think what you want. On March 31st, 1993, March is the third month also, so keep that in mind. On March 31st, 1933, Lee and co-star Michael Massey were filming a scene where Massey's character Fun Boy fires a revolver at Lee's character Eric as he walks into the room. The fatal scene called for Lee to be shot from 12 to 15 feet away, and the revolver was supposed to be loaded with blank cartridges, so there would be no fear of live projectiles flying around on set, obviously. However, the revolver's barrel was not inspected for obstructions before being handed to Massey before the scene. That don't even sound right. Unbeknownst to Massey, there was a bullet from the dummy round trapped in the barrel, which caused the blank cartridge to fire the same force as a live round. How that I'm gonna continue. Alright, the forceful blank struck Lee directly in the abdomen, and he was rushed to the hospital where he died hours later due to internal injuries. Another odd twist to the tragic tale, Brandon's father Bruce Lee died in 1973, shortly after starring in a film titled Game of Death. In the movie, the martial artist played an actor who was shot after gangsters replaced a fake bullet with the live one. You cannot make this stuff up. I'm actually glad I read that one last. That just doesn't make any sense to me. But do what you want with that information. I already know what was up with that. There's no such thing as a coincidence. Not at all. So I found this to be very interesting video. I enjoyed doing this, and it's really crazy, and I always say you just have to be careful what you open yourself up to. I love a good scary movie, but I'm not into all that like demon stuff and you know, just that's out there stuff, you know, like a regular scary movie, cool, but this other stuff is crazy. And then these people have all these issues on set, and then they continue to do this. Like, I would have been like the dude from Rosemary's Baby, and all that stuff happened to him, and he was in the hospital, and it said he never worked ever again on a set or nothing in that industry ever again in his whole life. That would have been me. I would have been done and wiped my hands with it. But this is the world we live in, and yeah, so I enjoyed this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it too. If I come across any more movies that, you know, I've never heard of or haven't mentioned on the channel before, I will discuss and do another part if I can find more information. But this one was a really good one. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, like this video, and comment down below your thoughts. What do you think? Do you think these were just coincidences or weird things that happened, or do you think these sets and these people were really cursed? Let me know. Alright, so I'll be back with another video next week. I will see you guys next time. Thank you for watching. God bless.